Welcome again to Math 800 Pre-Algebra. Today we are doing section 7.3, the percent equation. Our objectives: 1. To estimate answers to percent problems involving 25%. 2. To find 10% and 1% of a number by moving the decimal point. And 3. To solve basic percent problems using the percent equation. 25% means 25 parts out of 100 parts, or 25 over 100. That simplifies to 1/4. So 25% is equivalent to 1/4. The denominator 4 tells you that the whole is divided into 4 equal parts, which basically means we're going to divide by 4. So 25% of 40 would be 1/4 of 40, so you just divide 40 by 4 and you get 10. So 25% of 40 is 10. You can also think that 25% is half of 50%, or half of half. So half of 40 would be 20, and half of 20 would be 10. Estimate the answer to each question. What is 25% of 817? Notice we are estimating, so we will start with front-end rounding. 817 is approximately 800. Divide 800 by 4 and we get 200. So 25% of 817 is approximately, or about, 200. Again, you could also just do half of half. This again rounds to 800. Half of 800 would be 400, and half of 400 would be 200. Find 25% of 19.7 miles. Again, we are estimating. Use front-end rounding. 19.7 miles is about 20 miles. Divide 20 by 4, and we get an estimate of 5 miles. Or do half of half. Half of 20 would be 10. Half of 10 would be 5. 10%, or 10 parts out of 100, is the same as 10 over 100. This simplifies to be 1/10. A quick way to find 1/10 of a number is simply divide by 10. That's because the denominator 10 tells you that the whole is divided into 10 equal parts. We have a shortcut for dividing by 10. When you divide by 10, you simply move the decimal point one place to the left. What that means is we can very quickly find 10% of a number simply by moving the decimal point one place to the left. So what is 10% of 817? The decimal point is always after the ones place at the end of a number, and we're going to move it one place. So it'd be 81.7. Since it is a money answer, we put the 0 in, so we'd have $81.70. So if something is 10% off, and it's $817 normally, to find 10%, just move the decimal point one place, and that's your 10%. Find 10% of 19.7 miles. Again, we're just going to move that decimal point one place to the left. So 10% of 19.7 is 1.97 miles. Notice in this case we found the exact answer. These are not estimates, these are the exact answer. 1% means 1 part out of 100, or 1 over 100. The denominator 100 tells you that the whole is divided into 100 equal parts. So we're going to divide by 100. The shortcut for dividing by 100 is to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So to find 1% of a number, simply move the decimal place 2 places to the left. What is 1% of 817? Again, the decimal point is after the ones place, so at the end of the number. Now we're going to move it 2 places to the left and get $8.17. Find 1% of 19.7 miles, move the decimal 2 places to the left, and the answer is 0.197 miles. Again, these are exact answers. These are not estimate. This is exactly what 1% of each of these numbers is. In general, here are some shortcuts that will make your life easier. You do not need to have these memorized, but if you know them, they make your life easier in general out and about in the world and on our test. 200% of a number is 2 times that number. Basically, 100% is the entire number, so 200% is the entire number plus itself again, or 2 times that number. 300% would be the entire number 3 times, or 3 times the number. 400% would be 100% of the number 4 times, or 4 times that number, and so on. To find 50% of a number, just divide it by 2. You're taking half of it. To find 25% of a number, divide by 4, or do half of half. To find 10% of a number, divide the number by 10. The shortcut for doing that is to move the decimal point one place to the left. And 1% of a number, you divide the number by 100, and the shortcut for doing that is to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Again, you do not have to have these memorized, but if you know them, they can make your life quite a bit easier. Now we'll talk about the percent equation. In general, the percent of a whole equals part. So the word of in this situation means multiplication, so we have percent times whole equals part. This is an equation, so it doesn't actually matter what part you have on the left and what is on the right. So in this case, it's percent times whole equals part, but you can flip that around and have part equals percent times whole. They're the same thing. That's what the equal sign means. The equal sign means the thing on the left and the thing on the right are the same. Whether it's on the left or right does not matter. One thing to be careful with, percent written with the circle and the slash and the other circle is more of a word. It's not actually a math symbol. So in order to do the arithmetic, you would need to convert the percent to either its decimal form or its fraction form, depending on what you feel better with. I don't care whether you use the decimal or fraction, but you need to be able to do your arithmetic, so you will have to convert to one of these two forms. Also, when we get into some of our word problems, it might be helpful, instead of thinking percent times whole, to think of percent times the original or starting number equals a new thing. We'll see some examples of that in our next section. Example: 15% of $165 is how much money? Again, notice the decimal point is after the ones place. We're going to convert this to the decimal 0.15. You could also use the fraction 15 over 100. Of is multiplication. 165. Is our equal sign, and how much money is our unknown, so we will use n or x or any variable you'd like. Now simply complete this multiplication, and we get 24.75 equals n. We can check this. 10% of 165 would be $16.50. 5% would be half of that, which is about $8. $16.50 plus 8 is about $24.50, which is darn close to our actual answer of $24.75. So this is a reasonable answer. Notice this was just a check. You are not required to do this, but particularly on an exam where you don't have a calculator to double check your arithmetic, it's nice to be able to check to see if your answer is reasonable. How many students is 210% of 40 students? The how many students is our unknown. Is our equal sign. 210%, you can either use the decimal or the fraction, so either 2.10 or 210 over 100. Of is multiplication, and then our 40 students. Again, simply carry out the multiplication. N is 84. We can check this. 200% of the 40 students would be 2 times 40, or 80. We're going a little over 200%, so our answer should be a little over 80, which is reasonable. So our answer is n equals 84, or 84 students would be 210% of 40 students. 8 pounds is what percent of 160 pounds? 8 pounds is our 8. Is our equal sign. What percent means what we're missing is the percent. Notice how we switched letters and now we're using the p. It is helpful to note when you're looking for a regular number like 8 or 160 versus when you're looking for a percent. There's an extra thing we'll have to do at the end, and it's helpful to note that. Of is our multiplication, and then 160. To solve this, we're going to divide both sides by the 160 in order to get p by itself. Remember, 160 divided by itself is 1. 8 over 160 winds up being 0.05. Again, you need to be able to do long division on your exam. Some of you have been using calculators to help you out with your arithmetic. You are going to be in a world of trouble when we get to our exam. You only have 2 hours, and if you can't do your arithmetic yourself, you're never going to get the exam finished. Now, you'll notice in our previous problems, we had to convert the percent to a decimal or a fraction. Well, what that means is that when you're solving the equation, your final answer is in decimal form, or fraction form, depending, and you need to convert it to percent form. So 0.05 is the same as 5%. Remember, to move from a decimal to a percent, you move it 2 places to the right. Make sure when you are solving for the percent that you do this last step and convert it to percent notation. We can check this. 10% of 160 pounds would be 16. 5% would be half of that, or 8. So it is reasonable, and 5% is our answer. What percent of 50 is $68? Again, our percent is unknown, so I'm going to use p. Of is multiplication. 50 is our equal sign, and then 68. In this case, we're going to divide both sides by 50 to get the p by itself. 50 divided by itself is 1. Do this long division and you get 1.36. This again is in the decimal form, and our answer is 136%. Again, note we move the decimal 2 places to the right. It doesn't matter whether your answer is bigger than 1 or not. When you are solving for the percent using this method, you will always get a decimal answer and you will have to move the decimal point. When we were solving for percents using proportions, that was not the case. So be careful about the difference between using percent equation versus using percent proportion. We can check this. 100% of 50 would just be 50. 200% of 50 would be 100. So therefore, 136 is between 100 and 200, which is reasonable because 68 is between 50 and 100. So 136% is a reasonable answer. 1.36% would be unreasonable because that would be a little bit more than 0.68. That's just or 0.50. That's a ridiculous answer. So clearly this is going to be greater than 100%, so 136% is our answer. 162 credits is 90% of how many credits? So 162 is our equal sign. 90% converted to a decimal is 0.9. Again, you could use 90 over 100 if you prefer fractions. Of is multiplication. And then our unknown, which is the total number of credits. Divide both sides by 0.9. You get 180 equals n. Again, you can check this. 100% of 180 is 180. 10% of 180 is 18. Since 90% is 100% minus 10%, 90% would be 180 minus 18, which is 162. So our answer is correct. Find 250% of, 250% of what number is $75? So 250% is 2.5. In this case, I dropped the 0, but you could have it there if that makes it easier to see where it came from. Of is multiplication. What number is equal 75? Divide both sides by 2.5, and you get n equals 30. Again, we can check this. 200% of 30 would be 60. 50% of 30 is 15. If you add these, you get 250%, and if you add these, you get 75. So our answer is reasonable. N is 300. N is 30. That concludes section 7.3. Your next step is to complete the worksheet for section 7.3, then check the key for that worksheet, and lastly complete the online homework for section 7.3 through My Math Lab.